Hello and welcome. To some, welcome back. To others, welcome back again. To others, welcome back multiple times. We've decided to do one more video in our coronavirus series that we've entitled Coronavirus, When Will This Be Over? It's sort of a capstone for this project for us with some final information that we think will be helpful. It will only be between 15 and 20 minutes. We hope you stay with us. I think it will be encouraging to you and maybe those around you who need to hear some of these things. Before we get started, let me say one more time, thank you for those who've supported and encouraged us through our first 3 videos. The first one, Coronavirus, wait just a minute. The second one, Coronavirus, why isn't that being reported? Our third video, which was a little longer, entitled Coronavirus, What is Going On? And that video particularly was taken down on a couple of platforms once, and I think one platform took it down twice. But it is up again everywhere. One platform has pretty effectively buried it, but you can still find it. But if you haven't seen that video yet, if you'll type in your search engine, Coronavirus, What is Going On? And then add the name Michael DeMoss. After that video usually comes up right at the top. And I encourage you to watch that video. Mr. DeMoss is a friend, and he is the one who is distributing these videos for us across multiple platforms, and he's done a wonderful job. And I appreciate his help so very much. I think the last we checked, we're approaching, if we haven't gone over, 100,000 views. So thank you for your help in that. And I think it's obviously been valuable to many people. And we think this last video, Coronavirus, When Will This Be Over, will add even more encouragement to that. So I hope you'll stay with us. 15, 20 minutes. What can it hurt? Thank you for staying with us, and we're going to jump right in. I probably should say at the outset that if you've not watched the third video, Coronavirus, What is Going On? You may wish to stop and go back and view that video. I'm not sure we can grasp when it's going to be over if we don't really understand what is going on and has been going on. And also, this video will reference some of that material several times. So I'm going to assume that you've done that, you've watched that video, and let's just get right to it. Coronavirus is going to be over, first of all, when the media gets a better story that suits their, in my opinion, extremely hateful, manipulative, narcissistic agenda that they can run with. Now, they are in chaos creation mode. They're very good at that. They typically always are. But where coronavirus is concerned, they did a fantastic job at creating panic and chaos. They're always looking for another story. Think with me, if you would, about the last couple of weeks. There have been some incredibly newsworthy stories out there. One, former vice president, current presidential candidate, has some very serious allegations against him. Secondly, many new documents have been declassified that former Washington, D.C. officials and some current Washington, D.C. officials have said will probably lead to the biggest scandal since Watergate. That's huge. Yet those stories are getting very little mainstream attention. Why? Because they don't suit their agenda. It's not something they can use to attack the current administration. However, in the last few days, this story from Minnesota about the death of Mr. Floyd, awful, tragic. Somebody needs to be held accountable here. But if you think about the stories that are coming out, many of them now, they're not about the specifics of what the police officer or officers did. They're not about the circumstances surrounding his death. They're about our society. They're about our president. They're about the administration. They're about the inequity in our country. And all of those may be issues, but you and I need to understand it from a media perspective. They're looking for another story whereby they can create chaos, panic, and they just may have found a new story. But in light of that, think about how coronavirus has begun to fade from view, and that has come into focus. It ought to cause us to go, that's what the media does. It's about the news cycle. It's about the headline. It's about the byline. And they used coronavirus just that way. And now this story maybe will be the next chapter where they can move on. And if it is, coronavirus will begin to go away. First of all, it's about the news media, the chaos creators for their own agenda, picking a news story whereby they think they can further their own purposes. We need to be aware of that in light of all that they've given to us about this coronavirus issue. It ought to cause us to realize at least some of what they have given us is really about them, not about the pandemic itself. Stay with us for a second thing that's important for us to note as well. A second factor that's involved in when will this be over revolves around when people get a better understanding. Every day, more and more factual information is available to us. And more people are starting to say, wait just a minute, or why isn't that being reported? Or really taking a better look at what's actually going on. And as they become more aware, they get beyond some of the initial panic that we're susceptible to from a chaos creating media and begin to take a hard look. Things begin to change. There are multiple stories about people now starting to push back on that narrative. Businesses starting to push back. Communities starting to push back. Churches starting to push back. Why? It's because people are in a different place. You know, when we're panicked, we can run right past truth. The media counts on that. But as more and more people begin to look at these things for themselves, they get to a different place in their minds. Things begin to change. I encourage you, use the formula that was from our first video. And I must say, I'm a little discouraged and frustrated about how the numbers from the CDC and the World Health Organization that we use every day, particularly the CDC, are so skewed that it's hard for us to get good numbers anymore. But I have the latest data right here from the CDC. Those numbers are incredibly good news. Probably will not be ever mentioned that way in the mainstream media. It doesn't further their agenda. But you and I can still take the formulas, can still take the information and do the work for ourselves. And many have. And now they're beyond panic. They're getting to the place where they're angry. Some people are clearly still scared. I get it. Some people who've had family members have sick or died. I get it. We need to have compassion. We need to understand. But all that we were told with the models and the dire predictions and all of those things, people are now starting to put them in context. And it changes everything when people get a better understanding. Knowledge is power. I took that formula from our first video and began to look at my own county just this week. And I took the population of my county and I ran those numbers. I ran the formula. I took the numbers from the CDC, and I didn't try and factor out the COVID death certificate issue. I didn't try to factor out the probable case issue. It's interesting to me. The last time that those numbers were available, the death toll was around 45,000. Just under that number, the CDC's own website, it had a probable number, was over 5,300. That's over 10% that was included in that total number. Well, that probable count went away. I can't even find it anymore. They combine the two and they don't tell you what those percentages are. But I can still take that formula and apply it to what's going on in my county. What I found is that 10% of the people in my county didn't get it, haven't gotten it. 1% of the people in my county haven't gotten it. Really, according to their CDC numbers, accepting it all, which is really hard to do. But for sake of numbers, accepting it all, 1/5 of 1% of people in my county have gotten COVID-19. 1/40th of 1% have died from it. Think about that statistic. 1/40th of 1% have died from coronavirus. That's taking everything at face value. That's tragic if it's my family or yours, but it puts things in perspective. Once I had those numbers, I began to compare it to other things in my county. And for example, since the beginning of this year, there have been more alcohol-related driving deaths in my county. Not alcohol deaths, but a subset, just alcohol-related driving deaths in my county. That's those who died while under the influence, or though they hit and killed who were sober. More people have died through alcohol-related drunk driving in my county than have died from COVID-19. More people in my county, 4 times, almost 5 times as many have died from opioid overdose in my county than have died from COVID-19. That doesn't lessen the reality of COVID-19. It just puts it back into perspective. It doesn't set it high above every other issue we have. It puts it in context. And when people get that information, it changes everything. And coronavirus will begin to go away when people begin to put coronavirus in the context and the framework of all of the other things going on around us. It causes us to breathe easier. It causes us to realize this is not something that is so far, far worse in so many ways. The statistics just prove it not to be so. I encourage you, this second thought, that coronavirus is going to begin to go away when people have a better understanding of the numbers themselves. Stay with us for one more thought. The third factor of coronavirus, when will this be over, revolves around when our president gets a better sense that the panic is coming to an end. So much of his focus has been on helping the American people. While the media was obsessed with his impeachment, he was already thinking about the American people and banning travel from China, for which he was called a racist and other things. But as this pandemic began to unfold, he addressed the panic that began and ensued on so many levels. We don't have enough ventilators. Took care of that. We don't have enough supplies. Worked through that issue. We don't have enough testing. We worked through that issue. We don't have enough capacity. Sent in the military. Dealt with that issue. People that, as we shut down the economy, made sure that they had stimulus checks as much as possible, continually focused on helping people who were panicked get through this time. And as our president begins to see other things come into view and people get to a better place, he will, as president, turn his attention to other things to benefit the American people. There's a whole lot that needs to be dealt with that's going on now. Interestingly enough for me, in looking at 3 different news organizations today, all the things that are unfolding about Mr. Floyd and all of those kinds of things that are going on that need to be addressed, there's not one story on any of those 3 networks about coronavirus. Think about that. If coronavirus was the pandemic to end all pandemics, and it was so frightening and so scary, and it would not go away. Our president has done a good job of trying to help us get through this and get through a time of panic in this area. But now as the media, the chaos creators, are creating chaos in another area, and the country begins to focus on that, so will our president. He's trying to get a vaccine. He's trying to get therapies. But we're moving on to other issues. That ought to tell you and I some truths about the coronavirus pandemic. Yes, it's real. But these numbers and the statistics, are what they are. It's not something that is going to destroy our country. It's not something that's going to overwhelm our country. Our president has done a great job. He won't get the credit for those things. But as he begins to be able to focus on other things, knowing that the panic in large measure is finally starting to settle down, that'll be a sure sign that coronavirus will begin to come to an end and be over, not go away. The swine flu did not go away. It's now part of the seasonal flu structure in our country. It will just be put back in the context of all the other issues that surround us. And it will begin, in that sense, to go away. Stay with us for a final thought. Thank you for joining us for this one last video in our coronavirus series. I suspect that very soon coronavirus will be over because the media will get a better story. People will get a better understanding. And our president will get a better sense that the panic is beginning to subside. If you or someone you love and care about is still anxious about these things, point out where the media is now. Show them, share with them, encourage them to look at the statistics for themselves. Knowledge is power. Point out to them our president and his focus and all the things that he's dealing with these days. Now, coronavirus has already begun to take a back seat. And the truth of the matter is, there will always be another crisis. There will always be another circumstance that will cause us to fear or have anxiety. And as with my last video, I would encourage you. It will always be this way until the day that we die, or until the Lord himself steps back into this world in a very personal way. I hope that you have a relationship with him, because it is calming, it is reassuring, it is helpful at the most difficult, troubling times of our lives. He is there for us. He'll be there for you. Check out the links at the end of this video for more information. I hope you know that peace from the inside out. Understand that coronavirus and what's really going on, then you'll begin to understand when it's going to be over. Be safe. Be careful. By the grace of God, we'll get through this and the next crisis and the next crisis until Jesus comes. Have a great day.